Hi there, and welcome to this presentation on diversifying your career, produced for Fingal County Council Libraries Work Matters programme. My name is Jill Barrett. I have a business called The Head Coach, and I engage in a practice called transformational coaching. That is simply about helping people to think and act differently to get better outcomes for themselves in their personal and professional lives. So today our topic is diversifying your career. In the middle of this global pandemic, you may have been forced into any one of the following situations. You may have lost your job. You may have lost part of your job, so you might be working part-time hours or just doing contract work. Or, for example, you might be furloughed, receiving the PU payment. If you have your own business, struggling to find clients and maybe not able to do your work at all. And also, what this has done, even if you still do have a job, is a lot of us have been caused to stop, to pause, and to think about where our lives are going. What's the meaning of what we're doing? Are we making a difference in the world? How do we want to be remembered? What's our legacy? So lots of questions. So this question around, diversifying your career, what I'm hoping to do in the next 15 to 20 minutes is to give you a little bit of, I suppose, not guidance necessarily, but I suppose prompts to thinking about how your career has been to date, what it's like at the moment, and what you might do to progress it going forward. So I'm going to be giving you a few tools along the way, but bear in mind this journey is yours. So I'm not here to give you guidance, but rather just to start you thinking. And remember, today is only a taster session. The other videos that I've produced for this Work Matters program might also be of interest to you. One is called Job Hunting During COVID, and the other is called Working Remotely During COVID. So you might like to tune into those as well on the Fingal Libraries YouTube channel. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, and just let's have a look at this notion of diversifying your career. So what will we look at today? The first thing we look at is looking inwards. So really the most important thing in life is to start reflecting on the self at a point like this. So before we look outwards, we're going to start thinking about what's going on for us. So we call this the intrapersonal space. So taking a little bit of a look at ourselves. And that can be, a very revealing thing, because sometimes we might recognize, gosh, I've just been trundling along through life, sticking my head in the sand. And, I'm on this conveyor belt, and sometimes that's out of our control. And the second thing that we're going to look at is looking outwards. So examining our options. So once we've looked inward, we're going to look outwards. And the last piece we're going to look at in the session today is the next steps. So merging the two above, the looking inwards and the looking outwards, and then reaching out, so reaching out to others to get us support on our journey. In terms of diversifying our career and that sort of being on the conveyor belt of life, I suppose, and looking at, where you're going, at this point in your life, you might just discover, look, I haven't thought about it. I've put more thought and effort into planning my holidays when I could go on lovely holidays abroad than I've put into thinking about my career. We tend to be sleepwalking a lot of the time, and that's no one's fault. It's just that we're not consciously thinking about where we're going all the time, and life is, traveling at a pace. We spend a lot of time in our heads. We spend a lot of time either, regretting the past, worrying about the future, instead of just being in the now. And if you think about it, not being in control of your career and the options and the choices that you have, sort of taking a bit of a hands-off approach, so sort of standing back from that, is a bit like going fishing. And I'm not supporting fishing as a sport for those of you who don't want to hurt our lovely creatures in the seas and lakes and rivers. This is just an analogy. So suppose you were going fishing and, in the times when there was, hunting and fishing and gathering, and you needed to find a nice fish for your dinner. Well, you might have a preference for the type of fish you wanted. And indeed, only some fish, that you take out of the river or the lake or the sea might be edible. So you think about where you're going to go fishing, near the shore, near the bank, out further. What are you going to do? You're going to have to use a boat. Are you going to stand on the bank? Because if you just stand on the bank or the shore and you wait for the fish to jump out, you're just going to be faced with a very grim choice, which is just whatever life throws at you. So if we want something specifically for ourselves, if we want to start to design our lives and create our career, it's really important to start thinking about, like the fishing, you'd think about what rod and reel you used. You think about what bait you used. You'd think about whether you used a hook or not. You'd think about what time of the day you went fishing. You'd think about where, again, you would actually physically go to do it, what part of the water you would want to be in for certain types of fish. So similarly, in terms of diversifying our career and thinking about where our professional lives are going, we need to be starting to be a little bit more strategic in terms of thinking about all of those components. And also, again, the first piece that we're going to look at now, starting to look a little bit inwards. Part of that is something that I've mentioned very many times during all of the sort of productions I've made during COVID, is around the control. What can I control? What can I influence? And what do I have to accept scenario? And I just want to share with you a little diagram. Now, it's very crude. Okay, when I say crude, as in it's just something I drew. I must get one of these printed up. But if you can see it, it is just looking at what's called your circle of influence. Okay, your circle of influence, and it's looking at the inner circle. So you draw two circles, and in the inner circle, it's things you can control. And in the outer circle here, it's things that are out of your control. So think about your professional life at the moment, what's in your control and what's out of your control. And of course, making choices around career. And you might say, look, Jill, I have a mortgage, I have a family, I'm living by myself, I'm a single parent, I have a disability, I'm caring for an elderly parent, or a spouse or a partner who's having difficulties. I'm the sole breadwinner. Whatever your situation in life, there are always things that you can control. So that little useful exercise, putting the two circles together, so like the donut, on the inside, what can you control? On the outside, what you can't control, and focus on what's on the inner circle. Okay, so that's part of the self-reflection piece. So what are we going to look at in this? Four main elements. They're called your VIPs, your values. So thinking about your professional life going forward, is your current job or the situation that you're in professionally, is it honoring your values? Sometimes it's difficult even to think about what your values are. I'm going to share with you a little bit of an exercise in a moment around that. Secondly, interests. What do you really like doing? Is 60 or 70% of the work that you're doing at the moment, is it interesting to you? Does it, if it's the job you just lost, do you really want to go back into that situation again, or scenario, or company, or a sector, or a job that's similar, or do you want something completely different? Or maybe you want to work for yourself, who knows? So what are your interests? What would really have you leaping out of bed in the morning? The third thing, personality. These are your traits. Do the jobs that you've had, or does the job that you have at the moment, or the work that you're doing at the moment, does it play to your strengths in terms of your personality, what what you're good at, and what you flourish at, because it's innately familiar to you. And then the last thing is your skills. Okay, so thinking about the skills that you have, what are the skills that you can use to progress your career? Could you even articulate them? The skills and the interests are quite similar. The skills, things you're good at. The interests are just things you're passionate about. So you can be good at many skills, but you might not like to use all of them. Okay, but you might be identified as the person in the office or in the workplace, for example, who's great at IT. I remember in a few past workplaces, I was identified for some reason as the person who seemed to be sort of a bit technologically savvy or could figure it out. But I hated doing it, but I always seemed to be the person that got the job to figure it out. But that wasn't really my interest. So a period of what we call self-assessment is necessary to look at all of these things. Now, there are tools, I'm going to mention those in a moment, that you can use to look at all of these aspects of yourself. But just to allude to the values piece again, a really simple little tool for you to examine your values is simply to get a blank page and write out all of the things that are what I call deal breakers for you from a values perspective. Those could be things like you need to have autonomy in your work. Those could be that you need to get a really good return for your labor. Could be that you would like work that makes a difference in the world and to work for a company and an organization that honors that. It could be that you need respect is really important to you. It could be that a good working relationship and a harmonious work environment is important to you. So writing down on the page all of those, then you're going to do a little exercise. You're going to say to yourself, okay, say you've got 6 or 7 or 8 of those. I'm going to just only be able to have 5 of those. Which 2 can I do without? Okay, you take 2 away. The top few you leave there, and the ones that are least important you take away. Then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again until, like, you've got a very long list. You might do it a few times. If you've only a very short list, you might just do it once or twice and take a value away at a time. And what that exercise does is it enables you to get really clear really quickly on what's important to you. And then you just pause and you ask yourself a question. If you're currently out of work, what are the sort of types of companies, types of organizations, type of people that I might like to work with that will help me to honor those values and share those values with me? If you are in a job already, and most of you who are thinking about career and thinking about leaving them will have identified this already, that many of those values may not be honored by the people you work with or for, or the organization that you work with, or the sector that you're working in. So starting to think about those, the interests we're going to look at the moment, and the personality and skills. Again, coming back to what is it that really interests you? What is it that you're passionate about? And it's things like you ask yourself the question, what would I do every day as a job without needing to get paid for it? What would I do for no money? That's how you isolate what your true interests are. Personality, you can do things like the Myers-Briggs, for example, is something I use. There are different profilers out there. There are fun ones you can do online, or the slightly more advanced ones that you can do with a coach. And the last one, skills, it'll be easy enough for you to think about the type of skills that you have and what you're good at. So in terms of that self-assessment piece, we think about what is your concept of career as well. So not just, looking inwards to yourself, in terms of what makes you up, but also what's going on in your head. Are you the sort of person that thinks you need to be working in a full-time job to get satisfaction, getting a pay slip or a paycheck, every day, every week, every month, as in you're working, for the, that end of month or that end of week paycheck, and there's a certain amount of security in that. So you might like just one job, for example, for the entire week or month or year. Others of us like a portfolio career. We might have contracts here and there. We might work for ourselves, or we might have part-time work on a sort of a PAYE, and we work for somebody else. And then also we might work for ourselves in the other half of the week. So it's interesting, particularly in this time when we have loads of digital technologies available to us, and we have discovered, to our great delight and some of us to our horror, that everything or a lot of our work can be done entirely from home and entirely from a non-designated office space somewhere that we have to travel to. So important to start thinking about, as we tie together with this self-assessment piece, what is our concept of career, and to be open-minded. Your tradition may have been one job, the job for life, or certainly for this year and next year. Our new thinking may be around, okay, it's one job for Monday and Tuesday. It's a different job for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's doing a contract now and then having a break of a couple of months and then going again. It's, if you were in the position where you've lost everything, and we've all seen those stories on the news of, people who just had the rug taken out from under them in COVID. I was listening to the story of a barman who, right at the start of COVID, he lost his job and all the pubs closed. And, he was looking in China and seeing that, people were making a living out of sterilizing and, cleaning thoroughly buildings, nursing homes, workplaces. And he got himself equipment. He trained himself up. He got all his, compliance and regulation. He set up a website, got a van, hired somebody to help him, and he reinvented himself. So what is your concept of career? And is it time to shake it up a little bit and look at what you will now do going forward, regardless of whether you don't have a job at the moment or you're part of a job, or whether you are just in a role but wanting a little bit of a move on, a move up, a move out of what you're doing. So in terms of the self-assessment that we spoke about, there are a number of tools that you can use, okay? Career-focused self-assessment tools, which combine all of the areas that I mentioned there. So the values, the interests, personality, and skills. Some of them purely are focused on interest. And again, depending on what vintage you are, you may find all or only a number of these interesting. The first one is the Careers Interest Profiler on careersportal.ie. Okay, careersportal.ie, geared for the sort of younger transition year onwards, sort of post-primary level school goer and early career person. So great career interest profiler on that. Career Planner is a sort of more for the university type degree student, postgraduate student, and early career person again, but at a little bit more advanced stage in their career. And then there are many other licensed tools that are used for clients by private career coaches. Bear in mind that those tools, the majority of them, are based on what's called or a lot of them based on Holland and Strong's scale of career interest. So no matter what they look like, how basic they are, or how advanced, they all do the same thing. So they investigate the same sort of aspects of your values, your interests, personality, and skills. And they also come out with similar results and similar profiles. So no matter what the tool, don't worry about how advanced or how simple it looks. It'll do what it says on the tin. Something else that you might think about, I mentioned earlier, starting your own business is, I suppose, playing with the idea that this might be a time in terms of diversifying your career to start your own business. And there are quizzes, and I just mentioned one of these here. It's an EU website, and it's an EU focused or based quiz that you can look at on the web, test yourself and say, look, is entrepreneurship, is starting my own business a route for me? Would I be a good match for that? So again, not endorsing any of these. These are just things you can find easily, readily, and freely on the web. And again, if you want to go to a career coach who has a license for those tools, a good opportunity for you to explore your career interests and your suitability for different types of careers using those tools. So exploring what's out there, the next thing is sort of, we've talked about the looking inwards. So looking outwards is about exploring what's out there. So you might be thinking, and saying, Jill, sure, I've been doing whatever I've been doing for the last 20 years or 10 years or whatever. I have no idea what my other options might be. But once you've done your little bit of personal exploration using some of those career tools, you can think of, well, what are the types of jobs? It's suggesting sort of jobs and career areas that might be a good match for me. Where are the places that I might now look at the job specifications or the job descriptors to see, what I might possibly do, what's on offer. So where could I go? I'd go to gradireland.com, and again, not endorsing any of these. These are just suggestions of places you might go. So gradireland.com is one. Again, that's geared for the third level higher education market and early career people. Great career profiles up there. Similarly, careersportal.ie, I mentioned earlier, geared towards the secondary school level student, but still great profiles up there and great place to start your journey in terms of looking at options. Two really great UK websites are prospects.ac.uk and targetjobs.co.uk. And again, you'll find some of those don't translate directly to some of the jobs on offer in the Irish market, but they do. If you're an Irish viewer, you might not be today, but if you are based in Ireland, these profilers on these or these profile descriptors on these websites are excellent. The UK have great databases and great portals which have a reservoir of fantastic information. And you'll find that icould.com, which is the next one as well. It's a video-based website. It is, I find it fantastic myself. It's been around for quite a few years now, and they have loads of great videos looking at the people at all different stages in their careers, all types of jobs, and great for inspiration and to get a real feel for what people do on a daily basis in different roles. And the last one I've mentioned there in terms of websites is LinkedIn.com, which is a networking tool, social media platform, but really excellent in terms of giving you an insight into what real people are doing in real jobs. And also it's great because you can see their career history to date. So you can see what sort of backgrounds they've come from and what sort of education they've engaged in. So that is fantastic as well. And then there's the tried and tested, looking at job specs on jobs websites as well. So we talked about looking inwards. So starting to do a little bit of the navel gazing, look at yourself and look at what you might be interested in. And the next thing, then looking out, looking what our options are out there, and what's available to you. And then the final piece is bringing it all together. So thinking about yourself, thinking about what options are out there, and then taking it one step further, reaching out to, what I call virtual couples with people of interest or persons of interest. And I love this image from the Telegraph. It shows you, two people meeting in this context we are at the moment. And if we ever get to being that close, I'll be happy for starters. That'll be the next stage after this one in our current lockdown. So masked up and doing what they call the Wuhan shake, which is the elbow touch instead of the handshake. Just reaching out to people, either people that you know in your personal network already. So maybe a Zoom call or a WhatsApp. Hi, how are you doing? I'm at a bit of a crossroads in the career at the moment. I'm looking at different directions. I've started doing this career profiler someone recommended. I've had a look at options. I'd really like to talk to you about what you do in your job. Similarly, on LinkedIn, you can reach out, express an interest to people, either connect with them directly or get an introduction to them, and just ask them for 15 minutes of their time to have a chat with you and talk through what they do. And that will give you a great picture of all of the, the options that you've started to explore, if you like, on paper. It'll bring those to life. And hey, who knows? It might also lead to some great conversations, which will help doors to open to you in the future in terms of either investment or, if you're starting your own business or looking at business opportunities, or a job in the future, either part-time, full-time, or contract. So what have we talked about today? We've looked at self-reflection at this point, starting to look inwards, thinking about our values, our interests, our personality, and our skills, and what our concept of career has been to date. Secondly, looking at options, both in terms of thinking of both careers as either, employed or self-employed, or maybe a merging of the two, and where we might find information on all of those elements and the different sectors and jobs we might take up. And thirdly, we've talked about reaching out and networking, making connections to bring our career forward. And the last little thing I'd like to leave you with in terms of I suppose an idea is, it's a little story that I love that many people tell. I mean, it's quite well known. You might have heard it already, but hopefully it might be a little new to you. And I have another little prop here, which is a Buddha. Now, I don't carry Buddhas around with me generally. And I'm not a Buddhist, but I do have friends who buy me lovely things. And my friend bought me this lovely Buddha. It's a lovely wooden piece. And it's just, in case you don't know what a Buddha is, this is the Buddha and the Buddha shape. And in India, in a temple, I think it was called White Tikrit, many years ago, 1954, I think, 1950s anyway, they were doing some refurbishments on a temple. And there was a Buddha that they had been worshipping, all the monks, a clay Buddha. And they were moving it. It was a ginormous statue. Ginormous isn't really a word, but it is now, as they say. So an enormous statue. And they were moving it, weighed 5.5 tons plus. And they were moving it as they were, refurbishing their monastery and their temple. And it fell and a bit chipped out of it. And somebody carrying it noticed that there was a little glint in the clay, so a big clay statue. And they thought, gosh, what's that? So on investigation, they realized that actually the clay was just a covering. And that statue was actually pure gold. And in ancient times, so that statue would have been created maybe in the 12 to 1400s, monks would have to protect their valuables, they would have covered them in clay. So statues like that, they would have covered them in clay to protect them from thieves. And so they realized, 5.5 tons of pure gold. And I love that little analogy because it reminds us that very often all of us have a clay covering, okay? And it's all the things that life has thrown at us, the COVID pandemic. Maybe you're sick. Maybe your relationship hasn't turned out as you thought. Maybe you've had, illnesses in the family or an illness yourself, or, you have a spouse or a child or a parent who's very ill at the moment or has died. And I don't know what your circumstances are, but what I do know is that within you and the core of you is like that statue. It's gold. And one of the things that this pandemic has hopefully allowed you to do is to pause a little bit and to think about, again, where your life and where your career is going. And so to recognize that within us is pure gold. And what are you now going to do to uncover that beautiful gold within you and help yourself to shine going forward in your career? So that's all for me for this video. Looking forward to seeing you on one of the next ones, perhaps job hunting during COVID or working remotely during COVID. And you'll find that on the Fingal County Council Libraries YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me today.